Acting Secretary Berrier, thank you for being here today. Yesterday, I had a really good conversation with Auditor General DeFore with regard to oversight of all of these programs that have been created in the era of this pandemic, specifically with regard to unemployment compensation. And these programs are very well intended to help those in need, whether it's an employee who lost their job through no fault of their own, it's assisting a restaurant required shut down due to the governor's mitigation orders. But your department has seen its fair share of fraudulent unemployment claims. And USA Today stories found that there were more than $36 billion in fraudulent unemployment payments across the entire nation. That was then followed by the story of a Nigerian scammer who targeted our state specifically. What can you tell me about your fraud prevention system in this heightened era of cybersecurity attacks on all levels of government? How many fraudulent claims have you found, and what's being done to recover that money?
No, thank you, Senator, for bringing this issue up, because this has actually been one of the areas where we've been applauded by the federal DOL and also looked to by other states as somewhat of a model in our fraud fighting efforts. We first recognized, or the nation as a whole, because this is a national problem, just not a Pennsylvania problem. Nationally, all PUA systems were attacked by fraudsters, scammers, sometimes out of country, sometimes in state, basically using stolen identity information obtained either through the dark web or other means that were less than palatable. So far, we recognized what was going on, and we worked with the Treasury Department on implementing fraud measures as quickly as possible, whether it be moving from debit cards to paper checks. We tried to pivot and react as quickly as possible to prevent this fraud. But I think our biggest success story was partnering with a company called ID.me, which performs identity verification services. Most of the fraud occurred through the PUA program, which is the new federal program that we were asked to set up very quickly, and that admittedly people saw an opportunity to take advantage of. So to date, we have sent ID verifications to 988,000 PUA claimants, and only 158,000 of those claimants have verified their identity. That's only 16% of the PUA claimants that we have sent requests for information for. So the remainder 84% could be presumed fraud. Additionally, we have our internal audits division that works more as a referral program when individuals, neighbors, whomever, spot fraud, they can report it to us, and we have actually clawed back $55.7 million in fraudulent money. And also with our efforts by working with the Treasury Department, we were able to get back $740 million. There are still, we work closely with local law enforcement, the Attorney General, federal law enforcement. There are currently active investigations, fraud rings. I'm sure you've seen some of them displayed in the news about fraud rings and millions of dollars that have been scammed from the system. We continue to work with local law enforcement, but it's an all hands on deck approach here. And really, it's such a shame, because this widespread fraud is causing problems for us and preventing individuals from actually getting the money that they're legally entitled to.
Well, that's really wonderful news to hear. And you don't have to answer this question today. Please give it some thought. But as the chair of the Communications and Technology Committee, as we work to address data privacy, cybersecurity, IT procurement in this legislative session, your thoughts on tools that you may need, statutory changes that would be beneficial in assisting you in fighting this type of fraud would be very much appreciated. Talk a little bit about the call center legacy costs, and I know you've discussed this a bit here today, but obviously the pandemic has caused a lot of people to rely on those unemployment benefits. and your department has been in the position of bringing on additional staff. I'm a member of the board at the Pennsylvania Higher Education Assistants Association. We sent our call center employees over to assist your team. I know that Department of Revenue, I believe, did as well. My question is, you've recently announced changes, but how are you managing those long-term costs, and how are you hiring new call center staff? We know the pandemic is going to end. We heard from the gentleman from Indiana County that there may be some additional challenges with unemployment compensation for certain workers in certain industries. The calls for assistance may subside, they may change a little as we get back to normal, but want to make sure that we're setting ourselves up for a best possible financial outcome in the future associated with long-term legacy costs and the streamlining and modernization of your operation, recognizing that we have put over $300 million of funding to get to this point of modernization.
No, thank you, Senator. And actually, it actually gives me an opportunity to highlight one portion of our strategic plan that we're implementing is creating a UC fiscal office solely dedicated to our UC program area, which is something that's never happened before in the history of the program. We realize that, especially with this pandemic, there are so many funding streams. We receive our traditional UC grants through our RJM, which is basically funds our administrative needs based on a funding formula. But the federal government has actually been very generous with its COVID-19 funds that it has provided us. As you know, several different pieces of federal legislation have established temporary federal programs. The federal government has acknowledged, not only the administration of these programs, but also preventing the fraud attempts on these programs as well. And they've given us a good deal of money to make sure that we're implementing these programs properly. We're constantly reviewing what we're receiving from the federal government and monitoring that spending to make sure that we're not going over costs. We're receiving our money more in a piecemeal fashion. As we use it, the government gives us more, so we're a little bit in unknown waters, which is why we're more closely tracking the funding that we're receiving. However, you raise a really good point. We're bringing on board contract workers to help establish a call center within the UC program area. And, we need to make sure that this endeavor is paid for and that we're not spending more than what we're getting. So we are closely looking at that. And also we're looking at the fact that a lot of these federal programs are expected to expire at the end of September. So it makes it a little bit difficult for us to be able to project what we're going to need once those programs expire, because just because they expire doesn't mean that we still don't have to finish administering those programs as well. So we're in constant communication with DOL and trying to get all the federal money we can to make sure that we're implementing the programs to the best of our capability.
Thank you. And that UC fiscal office will be funded with federal or with state dollars?
Let's wrap it up, please.
Federal dollars. UC is primarily all federal dollars except for special administrative fund money or SIF funds that we receive.
And that office will be funded with those federal dollars?
Yes.
Very good. Thank you very much, Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.